Hello, you can enter my face now. I realized that the video call was not completely disconnected from my son. I tried to hang up the connection, but in the background I realized that my husband started to call someone. Then, the manner of his speaking greatly surprised me. Pretending, I peeked at the screen of the phone with my in-laws and saw an unexpected betrayal of my husband. My full name is Katherine Johnson. I am 36 years old. I am a housewife. Together, we have 3 children with my mother-in-law. My husband was assigned overseas for 3 years, and I was apprehensive about raising the children alone during this period. I worried about potential illnesses or injuries. After discussing my concerns with my husband, we decided to move in with my in-laws. My husband Bob and I have been classmates dating since high school. I've known my in-laws since then. We decided to marry once we were financially stable. After graduating from college, we got married. When I was 20, Bob wanted to support the family soon, so he joined a large company. He was ambitious and highly regarded, even though he had just started. Therefore, we were able to get married sooner than planned. Both our parents looked forward to our wedding. They were delighted at our ceremony. Both families got along well, having interactions even before our marriage, feeling just like one big family. Both parents were very pleased with our wedding. Whenever I remember the ceremony, it brings back happy memories. On my side, aside from my parents, I have an older brother 3 years my senior. He lives far away, and we occasionally meet. He sees Bob as a real younger brother, and they've been close since school. They both played sports in school, and even enjoy watching games together. When our children were born, he was thrilled, always bringing gifts. Such a caring brother. However, tragedy struck when our parents passed away in an accident shortly after our first child was born. The last time I saw them, they were gleaming with joy, eagerly waiting to see their grandchild grow. Their faces full of hope for the future and believing in continued happiness is my last memory of them. I had always looked forward to doing things with my parents and my newborn child. But just as they were in such high spirits, they were taken from me suddenly in an accident. Preparing for their funeral with my older brother, I was so shocked that I felt numb for quite a while. While preparing for the funeral with my brother, I was in shock for a while. My memories of that period are blurry. During the funeral, I was naturally overwhelmed by a sense of loss. I remember weeping quietly, with tears streaming down my face nonstop. My brother desperately tried to comfort me as I grieved deeply, but I felt like I wasn't truly present. Even after the funeral, it was my husband Bob who supported me. Even though Bob was close with my parents and grieved their loss, and despite his busy work schedule and taking care of our child, he was there for me. Seeing how Bob handled everything, I realized I couldn't stay like this and began to slowly recover. When I apologized for the burden I had placed on him during that time, Bob just laughed. Couples are there to support each other during tough times. It's a given for me to be there for you, Katherine. It's only natural to put on a brave face for our family, even if it's hard, said Bob. Inspired by Bob's attitude, I vowed to do my best for our family. My in-laws, knowing how devastated I was during that period, became even more concerned about me. Katherine, we consider you our very own daughter. Please don't hesitate to rely on us. We're here to help and support you anytime, they would tell me. Knowing them, I was reassured that living together would be worry-free. So we canceled our apartment contract, completed the necessary paperwork to transfer our child's preschool, and moved into my in-laws' home. Our kids are attached to their grandparents. So we changed preschools for them to live together, but they didn't seem to mind. The house is a 2-story owned property that Bob had built when he was young. It was designed to be child-friendly and to be their residence in their old age, with attention to accessibility, making it a safe home for small children. The house is slightly bigger than our previous apartment, and given our young kids, moving in didn't pose any problems. Our old apartment wasn't two-story, so initially, the kids found the stairs fascinating and often played on them together. I was concerned about how the change in environment might affect them, but seeing them play so energetically eased my worries. Even though they had to switch preschools, they seemed to adjust well and made new friends quickly. Though I was anxious they might falter from the changes, they've been healthy, which puts me at ease. Ever since we moved to New York, we've been living harmoniously with my in-laws, supporting one another. At first, since I was a stay-at-home mom, I intended to handle all the household chores. However, my in-laws proposed we share the responsibilities. While I took care of preparing meals, my mother-in-law did the laundry, though sometimes we switched roles. Apparently, she's not great at cooking, so she was relieved and even complimented my dishes. The house cleaning was shared between my in-laws and me, freeing up more of my time. I now get to spend more time with my kids, and I believe I've become more attuned to their subtle changes. The only issue, if it can be called that, is the kids missing their playtime with Bob. They adore him, and whenever he had time, he used to dote on them a lot. Despite his tiring job, Bob would sometimes tell me to take a break and handle some chores. He works hard both at his job and with the kids so much that I sometimes worried if he was resting enough. Even though you work and handle house chores, are you sure you're getting enough rest? When I asked Bob this, he assured me he was fine. Bob is gentle, family-oriented, and has a bright and cheerful demeanor. Being overseas, it's not so easy to travel back and forth, and in the span of 3 years, he only came back to the States once. Video calls with Bob while he's on his overseas assignment are something my kids and I really look forward to. With a 14-hour time difference, finding a common time can be tricky, but we try to video call at least once a month. We also exchange emails regularly, but nothing beats seeing each other's faces. We're always curious about his life abroad and want to ensure he's okay. Recently, the kids have grown more interested in the glimpses of foreign settings and Bob's stories during these calls. Today at 9 p.m., we're scheduled for a video call with Bob. The kids, eager to talk to their father, have even taken naps to ensure they stay awake. As I set up the computer for the call, the kids line up properly and soon start a lively conversation with Bob. Been a while. How have you been? When Bob's face appeared on the screen and I called out to him, the kids responded with joyous voices. Hey Dad, we're doing good. Guess what? They began animatedly, using their hands to emphasize their points. Bob listened with a delighted expression. I had so much I wanted to discuss with Bob, but I decided to wait until the kids were asleep. My in-laws and I watched the conversation with warm smiles. Bob mentioned he had work later, but it sounded like he had about 2 hours to spare after the kids. I was hoping to have some one-on-one time with my husband. Thanks to the consistent help from my in-laws, there were things, difficult to discuss or issues I had been facing that I really wanted to share with Bob. About 30 minutes into the video call, perhaps because of their energetic chatter, the kids began to look sleepy. Even though they had taken a nap, it was around their usual bedtime, so they were likely tired. Yet, they seemed to still have more to say and were trying their best to stay awake. The youngest is mostly asleep, occasionally jolting awake, but quickly succumbing to drowsiness again. Seeing them in such a state, Bob gently suggested they go to bed. Getting sleepy, huh? Just one more month, and Dad will be coming back to New York. We'll chat loads then. Bob's overseas assignment was coming to an end in a month. The kids were eagerly awaiting his return, but they still seemed to have so much to say. Remember, you have school and preschool tomorrow. Let's call it a night. My in-laws and I also persuaded the kids, and soon they were off to bed. As the drowsy kids waved goodbye, Bob waved back. As I stood to take the kids to their rooms, my in-laws quietly offered, "You two probably have a lot to talk about. Leave the kids with us and take your time." Holding our youngest, who had fallen asleep, my in-laws walked the other kids to their room. Grateful for my mother-in-law's words, I settled in to chat with Bob. Even in just a month, it's easy to notice how much kids grow. When it came to talking about the kids, the topics were endless. At the parent-teacher conference, they seemed to be having a great time. When the teacher asked them a question, they answered confidently. They proudly told me all about it afterwards. It was adorable. Ever since our eldest started elementary school, with Bob being overseas, he's always looked forward to attending those conferences. I've been sending pictures regularly, but he always wants a detailed account during our calls. Seeing how much Bob values our family and takes joy in the kids' milestones always reminds me of how fortunate I am to have married such a wonderful man. I cherish our current happiness. Besides updates about the kids, we also discussed some challenges, concerns, and future plans. After a while, my in-laws joined back in our conversation. Before we knew it, it was midnight. Bob had work to start, and we had an early day ahead, so we wrapped up the call. "Good night, you have work now, so take care," I said, intending to end the call. I mistakenly only turned off my camera, leaving the call still active. Realizing I hadn't fully disconnected, my drowsy brain scrambled to properly end the call. "Call's over. Hello, I'm done with the family call. You can come over now." Then, without noticing the computer screen, Bob started making a call to someone. He had said he was about to get ready for work, but now he's inviting someone over. Moreover, the way he spoke was quite friendly, giving me an uneasy feeling and making me hesitant to end it. It felt not just friendly, but there was a kind of sweetness, as if he was speaking to a lover. "What's going on?" Noticing my reaction, my in-laws asked, curious. I thought he was heading to work, but it seems like he invited someone over. "It's bothering me," I said. I felt guilty about eavesdropping, even though he's my husband, but I told them I just wanted to check who was coming. Seeing Bob's behavior on the phone, it seemed like my mother-in-law felt the same way and agreed with me, so we decided to watch together. Although I had a bad feeling, I reassured myself, thinking maybe he's just close with a coworker and I'm overthinking this. However, a foreign woman walked into the house, chatting familiarly with Bob, and even touching him. No matter the cultural differences between the US and other countries, you wouldn't just invite a woman into your home or be this intimate. I instinctively looked at my in-laws, and both had a grim expression. They murmured in disbelief, watching the video as if seeing something inexplicable. But just as I thought maybe I was overreacting, and it was just cultural differences, the two clearly began to engage in infidelity. Wait, what? Seeing Bob's shocking behavior, I was more calm than angry and quickly pressed the record button. My in-laws had a mix of guilt towards me and anger towards Bob on their faces. "Catherine, are you okay? You don't have to watch this if it's too hard," my mother-in-law said, concerned about me, who was visibly shaking. Even in this situation, the care from my in-laws brought some comfort. "I need to see this for evidence." "I'm fine," I assured her and continued to watch. While I felt disgusted and angry about being cheated on, I was surprisingly calm after the appalling act. The two began to talk on the bed. From their conversation, it was evident that the woman knew Bob was married, and it seemed to be a relationship limited to his time abroad. "Thanks for taking me on that trip the other time." "No problem. Thanks to your guidance, I had a great time." It turned out Bob had taken the woman on a trip recently. The destination was a place our kids had expressed interest in, and we had talked about visiting as a family someday. And since they had no acquaintances abroad, they seemed to have enjoyed their trip without any inhibitions. "But you covered the expenses, right? Is the money okay?" The woman spoke worriedly about money, seeming nervous about her affair being discovered. Unbelievably, Bob had been telling me he earned less than he actually did, and he had confided in me that he had been spending the extra on his leisure. Apparently, his company has 2 payroll locations. With this shocking revelation, all of Bob's past actions started to seem suspicious. My trust in Bob seemed to shatter audibly. By the time I finished observing Bob's behavior, it was past 2 a.m., stunned by the shocking truth. The 3 of us were speechless. "Let's get some sleep for now, and then think about what's next," my father-in-law muttered, and we decided to head to our bedrooms. Once in bed, I was wide awake, unable to sleep. Bob had always been caring, proactive in childcare, and kind. We've known each other since high school, so I thought I understood him pretty well. I never thought that the Bob I knew was a lie, but with recent events, I felt I no longer knew him. I had always believed he'd never cheat, and if it were just eyewitness accounts or photos, I probably wouldn't have believed he was having an affair. But having seen the scene on a video call, I was in shock, and my thoughts were frozen. Gradually, various emotions towards Bob began to well up. I found myself wiping away tears that wouldn't stop flowing. Knowing I had to be up early, I tried to sleep, but my mind kept returning to Bob, and my drowsiness vanished. Before I knew it, it was morning, and I hadn't slept a wink. I used makeup to hide the redness around my eyes from crying, and started preparing for the day. "Good morning, breakfast is ready," I called out cheerfully to my children, trying to act as usual. "Mom, are you okay? Your eyes are red, are you all right?" My kids looked worried. I couldn't hide my bloodshot eyes, and had caused them concern. "It's okay, honey. I just stayed up late last night, so I might be a bit tired," I replied with a smile, and the kids mimicked my tone, saying the same thing and laughed, looking relieved. After seeing off the kids, I decided to take a break because my in-laws were concerned. Maybe because I had moved around to prepare for the kids' morning, this time I fell asleep instantly. I wished that the events of the night had just been a dream, and as I lay down, my consciousness faded instantly. I had planned to rest for a short while, but ended up sleeping until the evening. My father-in-law had picked up the kids from kindergarten, and my mother-in-law had prepared dinner. "I'm so sorry for sleeping so much." "Thank you," I apologized as I immediately helped my mother-in-law and carried on as usual. When night fell and the kids were asleep, I spoke to my in-laws about my thoughts on the future. "I don't think I can live with Bob anymore, so I'm considering getting a divorce." At first, I was shocked and bewildered, but I couldn't see myself forgiving a husband like Bob, who could lie like that. "We're truly sorry for what our son has done." My in-laws seemed remorseful about Bob's actions and offered to help with the divorce proceedings. Bob would be returning from abroad in a month, so I decided to quickly prepare everything by then. The next day, I immediately consulted with a lawyer known for handling infidelity and divorce cases. Also, Bob was quite active on social media, posting about his life abroad. He had been posting photos from overseas, and our kids enjoyed seeing them. I thought he might be careful about it, but since his partner seemed to be a foreigner, I thought there might be some clues on his social media. So I checked. After investigating, I found the woman he was seeing and hired a private investigator to identify her. Turns out she worked at the same company as Bob and was a local employee there. So, I explained the situation to Bob's company and asked for their cooperation. Bob had always been a straight shooter, so they didn't believe it initially. However, after showing them the video evidence, they understood and offered their support. I also informed my brother and some close friends about the whole thing. Everyone was skeptical at first, but after showing them the video, they all sided with me. That guy, even with a family, what was he thinking betraying like that? Especially my brother, who was close to Bob and trusted him with me, was quite furious. Though it was just a month's time, being a homemaker gave me the flexibility to prepare, and with the video evidence at hand, I managed to get everything ready for the divorce with the support of my in-laws. By splitting up the necessary tasks, we managed to finish everything before Bob's return. However, explaining to the kids was a real challenge. They were attached to Bob and were eagerly waiting for his return. If I didn't tell them we won't see him anymore, even after the horse, they might still want to live with him. But considering their young age, I softly explained the situation with Bob and managed to convince them that we couldn't live with him any longer. Your dad, you see, he told us a very bad lie, and I just can't forgive him, so we can't live with him anymore. Really? Well, okay then. Since Bob had been away on work abroad before, they thought it was just another one of those times. They'll probably understand better as they grow. For now, they seem to accept the fact that they won't be living with Bob. Having finished all the preparations, I invited the newly returned Bob for a meal, saying, "It's been a while." I told him to meet at a private dining room in a restaurant. To Bob's surprise, not just me and the in-laws, but also some company executives and a lawyer were present in the room. By the way, my kids were with my brother, who feared he might hit Bob if he saw him. What's going on? Why are all these people here? In front of all these unexpected faces, Bob asked with a puzzled look. The lawyer began explaining about his infidelity and the divorce. "I haven't cheated, there must be some mistake," Bob vehemently denied, acting like a victim. Even when confronted with photos of the other woman, he insisted they were just colleagues, and she was simply helping him adjust to life abroad. My husband desperately tried to explain himself, and had I not known any better, I might have thought it was all a misunderstanding. Seeing Bob lie so effortlessly, a chill ran down my spine. You still say the same after seeing this. Losing patience, my father-in-law, trying to keep his anger in check, showed the video evidence. Bob, clearly agitated, started to panic. "How did you get this? I didn't think I was being filmed." His employers then told him they couldn't trust him anymore and notified him of his termination. My in-laws were furious with Bob, my husband, and confronted him. "No, family is everything. Trust me, I'm not going to get a divorce." I looked at Bob coolly, wondering what he was trying to say now. "We'll discuss the divorce in detail later," I calmly said that to a flustered Bob and left the room. That night, Bob, hoping to talk to me, came to the house where we had lived with my in-laws. However, my children and I had already moved out. Through connections from my father-in-law, we were introduced to a secure and comfortable property, and we had moved immediately. I didn't want to see Bob anymore, so I made a snap decision to move. I felt guilty about having to change schools and daycares for the kids, but they seemed fine with it, which was a relief. Bob came over and wanted to know where our new place was, but my in-laws firmly refused to tell him and gave him a piece of their mind. Bob apparently left after that. He kept sending persistent messages afterward, but I only responded about the divorce mediation and ignored the rest. He kept sending messages full of excuses. It was annoying, thinking if he didn't want this, he shouldn't have cheated in secret. Furthermore, my mother-in-law informed me that a neighbor had spotted Bob near the school and kindergarten. He was probably waiting outside to catch a glimpse of our kids and talk to me. Hearing this, I was relieved we had moved to a distant area. A few days later, at the divorce mediation, Bob had lawyered up well, and we finalized the divorce smoothly. I claimed a portion of our assets and gained custody of all 3 kids. It was also decided I would receive child support. Please don't divorce me. I'll never cheat again. I've been good till now, right? Give me another chance. It was just a lapse in judgment, but it was too late. You enjoyed yourself abroad without me. I don't want to see your face anymore. Bob tried to cling, but I had no trust left for him and brushed him off coldly. However, he insisted on seeing the kids periodically. I didn't want them to meet Bob, but he does have the right to see them post-divorce, and if the kids wanted to, I felt it would be cruel to stop them. So we decided that whenever Bob meets the kids, my in-laws or my brother would be present. After the divorce, Bob, not giving up, asked friends to mediate, playing the victim. However, since I had explained the situation to them in advance, they refused him. If I hadn't informed them, they might have felt sorry for Bob, leading to further issues. I was truly glad I had informed those around me about everything. Bob was once seen as a diligent worker and a loving father, but now everyone knew about his lies and infidelity. He had no allies, his friends distanced themselves, my in-laws kept their distance, and Bob became increasingly isolated. Currently, Bob has almost run out of savings and has child support to pay, so he's been working non-stop. Because his previous professional circle knows about his actions, he's taken a full-time job in a different field. He's also juggling multiple part-time jobs. In the beginning, he was excited to see the kids, but as they grew, they understood what he had done, and the meetings became less frequent. I'm not sure about his mistress since she's abroad, but I heard she received a warning from her employer. She's still overseas, so I hope at the very least she's learned her lesson about getting involved with a married man. Life after the divorce is comfortable with the asset division and child support. Considering my children's future, I started working again. It was tough on my own, but with my brother's help, I managed to raise them well. Currently, I live on my own in a town a bit away from the city where it's not too inconvenient. Since I've shifted to remote work, I spend a lot of time at home. Now that my children have grown and moved out, I have more free time. I'm enjoying a relaxed life, gardening occasionally. My children visit with my grandchildren, and I look forward to treating them to meals I've prepared, savoring my peaceful retirement.